Okay, here's the Taliesin's boiler. As you can see, it's been put back together with, it's got some cladding on. The boiler inspector passed a hydraulic test on it, I think a month or so ago. So basically the boiler work's finished, all the restaying's done, it's got new tubes in. So what we're waiting for at the moment is some parts to come to finish the superheaters. It's having new all stainless steel superheater elements, but we need some ball ends, and those are coming from a CNC machining place that make these for us, because the balls are quite a difficult shape to machine on an ordinary lathe, so a CNC machine is the way to go for that. Yeah, so this is the new stainless steel smoke box that we've made up for the Taliesin. It should not rot away like the previous mild steel one did. And if you look in here, here's the start of the superheater elements. You can see some tubes that loop in and out. Obviously they've got to have pieces that come up to the top and from the bottom up to the top as well. So there's a lot of work to do on the superheaters still. This is a ball end that I mentioned. So you can see the curved surfaces. So if you took that curve round, it would form most of a sphere, but this bit's hollowed out because it just doesn't need to be there. So this is used to be clamped up in the header like that. Now it's got a spherical ball end, so that when it's clamped up, it can adjust itself, wiggle itself to seal. So it's clamped with a washer and clamp arrangement, a bit like this. So there'll be a bolt up the middle, and then that'll be clamped up there, and the bolt pulled up tight, so that the metal stainless steel surface here can seal against the seat up in the superheater header. Yeah, so here's the ball end, and say this is a 45-degree seat that's been cut in the superheater header, so the ball, in theory, it goes straight up, but obviously being semi-spherical, it will seal in any orientation, but still we occasionally get little leaks, which might mean jiggling the pipework about, or some more sealant on there or something, and pulling the bolts up again to get them to seal. But obviously a seal on the superheater is very important, because any leaks will destroy the smokebox vacuum, or reduce the smokebox vacuum, and lose superheated steam pressure. So that just makes the engine not steam well at all. So having this working well is very important. We've created a little soot trap in the bottom here. Previously the boiler barrel extension carried on round, but this area here tended to fill up with soot and crud, which is very corrosive. And in fact the the tube plate here was being eaten away by the sulphurous corrosion products. So we've made this trap so that the stuff drops away from the boiler tube plate. Will hopefully stop it rotting away as quickly. Right, here's the rest of Taliesin. All what you see here has been overhauled and is just waiting for the boiler. So the power bogies had a full mechanical overhaul, the trailing bogies had a full mechanical overhaul, the cradle's been sorted out. So basically once the boiler's done, we'll put it in and then the cab can go on and the piping can be connected up and the loco will be running. This is the boiler for the Prince. It's the boiler that was delivered in the Second World War, surprisingly. So when the railway stopped running in 1945, it had just been delivered. And in 1954, when the volunteers came to start restoring the railway, they found this brand new boiler sat next to the Prince, ready to be put in. So that's why in 1955 the Prince was the first restored steam loco working on the Ffestiniog railway again. So anyway, it's the same 1940s built boiler, but it's obviously had quite a bit of work done in the meantime. It's got two superheater flues, which it didn't have, and it's got a welded foundation ring, and it's got welded stays, but otherwise it's pretty much the 1940s boiler as delivered. Anyway, it's just in the middle of a 10-year boiler exam, so we were able to leave the superheater flues in because they've only been in for 10 years, but we had to take out all the small tubes. Anyway, these are the new tubes that are just being fitted now. You see they're a bit wobbly yet, because Rob Coulson is just starting to install them, so he'll be expanding them. So this mole grip is holding these two tubes tight while he works to expand the tube at the other end. So you see at this end they stick out quite a long way, and that's fine because it doesn't matter in the smoke box end if they're sticking out a bit. But in the firebox end they need to stick out just the right amount so that when we come to do the seal weld there'll be no more tubes sticking out into the fire, because if there's tube ends sticking into the fire then that will start to overheat and burn and start to crack, which could spread down into the water area. So they need to be very tidy at the firebox end. This is the firebox end. You can see the tubes, and I say Rob is just starting to expand them all in. So to do that he'll be using an expander like this. So there's got a tapered mandrel bit which goes in there, and there are rollers. This has got 3 rollers. 5 roller ones are preferred if you've got a copper firebox, but we only have steel fireboxes, so we tend to only use 3 roller expanders. Anyway, you insert this into the tube end and then roll it round, and as you do, as the mandrel goes in, the rollers come out, and as it's turning, so you're rolling and expanding at the same time. So basically you're stretching the tube out and pushing it against the tube plate so that it grips. So we used to run locos with tubes just expanded at each end. But we'd get leaks. Not at the smoke box end, always at the firebox end. So now we expand, and then we put a small weld around the outside of the tube end, and then they're expanded again lightly to push the tube back against the tube plate, because the welding will probably pull the tube away from the tube plate slightly. As you can see, there's a few more tubes than there are holes in the boiler, and that's deliberate because that means we've got some spares. So the tubes have been prepared by the manufacturer, because I don't know if you can see, but this end has been already expanded, swaged up to a slightly larger diameter. So this end will go at the smoke box end. And then we've annealed the end of the tube, which involves heating it up and then letting it cool very slowly, so that the metal is as soft as it can be, because you need it to be soft so you can expand it. So the expander goes in like that, and I say you roll it around and it'll gradually expand it. So this is the air tool that spins around and turns the mandrel of the expander reasonably rapidly and can apply quite a lot of force. So it'll take probably a few days of expanding to get them all tight, both ends. And say then they'll be seal welded, and then we'll be able to do a hydraulic test on the boiler. And hopefully, if it passes that, then we can get the boiler inspector in to witness a hydraulic test, and that'll be another stage on the road to Prince being back in traffic. Right, here's Prince's coupled wheels. They've been reprofiled. As you can see, there's no crank pins in the driving set because they were found to be worn, so they've been taken out. New ones have been machined up and they're away for hardening at the moment. We nitride harden crank pins, basically so they last, because unhardened steel basically would wear out too quickly. The leading pins, they were okay, so they're staying in, and you can see the blue on the journals, what's been rubbed round. So that's because the axle boxes are being fitted to match the journal's diameters. The eccentrics, they're okay, so they're staying on. We don't generally get too much wear on eccentrics, so yeah, so that's the coupled wheels. Here's Prince's chassis, say, part way through the mechanical overhaul that always goes alongside a 10-year boiler up overhaul. We're going to have new slide bars because they were found to be worn. The bars here, so we've got those hopefully on order now. But otherwise there's nothing particularly untoward that we've found that needs doing, which is not surprising in a way, in that Prince doesn't do a massively big mileage every year now. It's mainly used on Woodland Wanderer trains and at galas and so on, so it's not thrashed or used 10,000 miles a year. I think it does just 2,000 or 3,000 miles a year, something like that is perhaps a normal mileage for the Prince now. Right, here's some more bits of Prince. These are the expansion links. As you can see, there's new pins being made for the ends. And here's the eccentric rod that will go around there and push the expansion link rocket back into. As you can see, the ends of the expansion links have been excuse me, welded up, so there's no hole there at the moment. So they've obviously worn, so these will be drilled out and then a bush put in, and then the new pins fitted so that basically it'll run reasonably quietly. So say these are driven by the eccentrics that we saw on the driving axle. And then over here we've got the coupling rods. You can see the brass bushes on the ends have been taken out. They're there. So we're checking the centres, because obviously the centres of the coupling rods need to match the centres of the axles exactly if the loco is going to run nicely. And here are the crossheads. As you can see, they've been filled up with white metal and machined off, and then the groove will be machined out of the white metal to match the new slide bars when they've been fitted up and are ready. Right, here's Prince's water tank. As you can see, we put in new sides outside and inside, welded to the, I think, 1890s wrought iron top, but sadly we can't get this new metal to join adequately to the old. We keep getting tears in the iron and leaks, and the problem is that the wrought iron is thin in this area, and basically various people have had a go and they can't manage to join the two. And we think that even if we did manage to get it to seal up for now, the tank actually is probably only going to have a short life. So reluctantly we've decided to put this to one side and build a complete new tank We'll take the handrails and brackets, filler lids off, and so we'll build a complete new one in steel, and then put this to one side. Who knows, we might put it on the Welsh pony Palmerston Frankenstein's monster of bits that were left over, so maybe it could have a tank as well. Okay, as you know, we had a problem with Welsh pony, the crank pin came loose, and on taking the wheel set out, basically we discovered that the wheel centre had cracked between the crank pin hole and the axle hole. So we've bought in, well, we've had a pattern made, and we've got new wheel castings. So here's a wheel casting, and you can see there's the other one is already in the lathe being machined. So these new wheels are steel, whereas the original 1867 wheels were iron. So these wheels should outlast the locomotive by a long time, I think. So we've got new wheels which we can machine, but we're reusing the original axle, which is here. So the wheels will be pressed onto this diameter here. Unusually, there's two keyways, and there were two keys fitted between the old wheels and the axle. We don't know why, but I suspect that basically one keyway had got damaged, failed, and maybe the wheels had loosened at some point, and they'd been refitted with a new keyway. So obviously, you know, Welsh pony didn't have an easy life back in the Victorian times and through to the 1930s. So when that repair was done, we're not certain, but anyway, we'll be putting it together with just one keyway, well, using one key, I think, because generally only one key is needed to locate a wheel on an axle. Sometimes we don't use keyways. It depends on the fit that's needed. For instance, carriage wheels are just a press fit because they don't need to be located exactly, and there isn't a lot of force between the two wheels. But on a locomotive that's been driven by rods, you definitely need a keyway to hold the location. Anyway, here's the broken bits of Welsh ponies' 1867 driving wheels. As you see, they had to be drilled through and then broken out with hammer and chisel. So they had to be broken out of the tyre and broken off round the crank pin holes and the axle holes. So you can see here there's a nasty crack around this crank pin hole, and it's heading towards the axle hole. If you can see that, you see the crack goes all the way from the crank pin hole to the axle hole. So the iron has opened up slightly, and it's basically let go of the crank pin, which is why the crank pin that was in here was able to rotate. So, and you can see here there's some porosity, some holes in the original casting where maybe the crack originated about there. You see the crack goes across this side too, so it's cracked right through and opened by maybe just a couple of thou, enough to let the pin rotate. And once the pin started to rotate, it's then started to wear this surface and the surface of the crank pin, so that once it starts to wear, then it becomes looser. So it had got to the point where we could just pull the crank pin out by hand. So this is a tyre from Welsh Pony. I think it's a 1920s tyre, but we're going to remachine the surface that grips the wheel, so we can skim it out on this lathe. So it's hung at the moment and it's being positioned so it's on centre. So this inner face will get machined, and then the new wheel casting will be machined very slightly larger by a few thou. The tyre will be heated up, dropped onto the wheel. So we'll be able to use the tyres again, we're using the axle again, and we'll be able to do the same thing with the crank pins. So it's only the two wheels that we're obviously not using because we've broken them out. Vellinhelly, as you see, it's now completed and in traffic. Well, in traffic as much as it is, you know, it does footplate rides at various places and lighter works trains. But the rebuild has gone very well and produced a very nice result. Obviously the biggest job was the new boiler, but also there was some mechanical fettling done. But basically it now looks as good as new and should be able to run for many years before having major attention. Apart from its 10-year boiler exams, it's should be good for a long time.